The opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Eastlink Community TV, its sponsors, or partners.
Welcome back to another episode of the Unlikely Innovators, where we highlight unlikely stories of innovative folks from around Northern Ontario.
And it's good to be back, of course, with Kelly Scott from Barrydowne Paint. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super happy to be asked.
Yeah, we're super pumped about it too. You know, offline there we were talking about painting and paint, so we hope to dive a little bit deeper with some of the questions we want to chat with you about. I think it's just one of those things like Barrydowne Paint. Barrydowne Paint, we bring color to life.
That's
Is that
pretty
right?
Good. That's it.
Is
yeah.
He'd been practicing all day.
We had been practicing
Really?
a lot. So it's, you know, that something's really like a staple in the community when there's a jingle that everyone
Yep.
sings, right? Your family's been doing this since 1981.
Yeah.
Did you always think you were going to join the family business, or how did that come about?
So I've thought about this question a lot because I think I was one of those kids where I was like, I'm going to be an airline pilot. I'm going to be a vet, like kind of like, you know, all these different roles that I wanted to do. But and I mean, anyone that's been in our store they'll be like, we've seen this girl since she was a child. And that was because I hated taking the bus. So, you know, on the bus, there's slush, there's everything. So the deal was if I went into the store for like 7 a.m., I would get a ride to school. Mm-hmm. So I was in the store all the time and just would work there every morning, and then I would walk there after school. And so I think it just kind of like through osmosis, I just really grew to love the business. When I went to university, I went to Laurentian, did a business degree. And I remembered as I kind of went into it thinking like, you know, when you are the second generation in a great company, it's actually it's a privilege, but it's also a bit daunting because you ask yourself like, how entrepreneurial can you really be here, especially if you are an entrepreneur at your core. And so I think that I quickly realized that, okay, there's a ton of room for flexibility in this business to really like experiment and try different things. So I would say probably second year of university is when I was like, this is going to be it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when I said, and I think it's important to mention, I don't do this alone. My husband, Matt, is also involved in the company. He's just more shy than I am. And so, but I actually pitched him on it. I was like, hey, like he worked for a really big company at the time. And I was like, would you like to do this with me? And he was on board, which I'm really lucky because it's kind of a case of like 1 + 1 = 4 with the two of us. So, so yeah, that was kind of how it happened.
Yeah, and I can imagine that could be daunting where, like you said, you're taking over a legacy, right?
Yep.
And that must be, you know, weighs on you until you've done something, you've put your own stamp on the company,
100%.
right?
And you know, people that, I think that sounds like, oh, you know, gosh, that must be so hard, because there's a lot of businesses out there that people take over that maybe are struggling or they're not in great shape. But my parents and then my grandparents before that, they had created such a good foundation that it is kind of thinking like, how can you really like improve on something that's such a staple, right? So, but yeah, I think it's really worked out for us. I don't regret it at all.
No.
Well, I mean, sometimes if I'm like, oh, you know, they're shorthanded and like on Saturday, beautiful day, and my friends are like, where are you? I'm like, I'm at work, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. But it sounds like you had it all figured out like early on, second year of university, to say like, I'm going to go this direction. I guess we know that you went in a direction, it all worked out, but did you have plans of what you might have done differently had you decided at that point you didn't want to go down that road? Did you let yourself think about that? I just know that when I was in second year, I didn't even know if I was even graduate university at that point.
I was definitely going to go the finance, accounting, or even like strategy route. That was definitely, and there was a lot of pull. There was a lot of pull from my professors that had found good opportunities for me, especially in my 4th year of university. I had amazing professors at Laurentian, and a handful of them had found opportunities where like, hey, like these were good opportunities, and they were like, you know, I could get you a spot at Deloitte, or you could go work here. And so there was that temptation where I was really like, oh, these sound very exciting, whereas like walking into the family paint store and thinking you're going to reinvent things doesn't necessarily have the same like appeal right out of school. And I remember a lot of my friends that I graduated with thought it was completely nuts. They were like, why would you do that when you could go and do this? But no regrets.
I suppose that you're really living every facet of business school now, right? Instead of specializing as a consultant or something or strategy, you get the top 5, you know, and everything: finance, accounting, marketing, HR, everything, right?
Yeah, everything. And on like in ebbs and flows, like kind of some of it is seasonal, but that is true. And that was what was great about Laurentian was like really well equipped for, you know, being able to dive into that. We're lucky in Sudbury because we have so many great institutions. We've got Cambrian, Laurentian, College Boreal. I think a lot of times you have pressure to think that if you want to achieve a lot, you have to go out of town to go to school. But there were no resources that we didn't have that didn't set us up to be able to do what we're doing now right in Sudbury.
Yeah.
Did you ever use any of those case studies from the paint store in your studies?
I actually wrote case studies.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I wrote case studies based on situations in the store. Like, yeah, and I don't know if anything ever happened to them, but I probably, and this is before ChatGPT, like when you wanted to write something, you had to think, map it out, type it in. Yeah. So I wrote about 3 case studies that were, and I don't know if the school used them or not, but I
probably
definitely
tucked away in somebody's filing cabinet, maybe. Hopefully,
they're probably on a floppy disk. Actually, if you go back far enough, they're probably on a floppy disk somewhere.
Love me a floppy disk.
Yeah.
We grew up with those. I had quite a few of those. Yeah, hopefully they're all destroyed somewhere.
My mom used to call our computer in the house the word processor.
Oh yeah, we used to do training on word processors. Yeah,
and we had this before we had a computer. I had a pretty humble upbringing, I should say. Mike knows this, but we had like we borrowed my aunt's typewriter for stuff, and like everyone else had WordPerfect already, so I'm using like it even had like the little reservoir for whiteout if you hit backspace.
I was gonna say, did it have the eraser band where that was a fancy typewriter? Yeah,
it was huge. It was like big and heavy and like plugged into the wall. It wasn't like your little Underwood or something.
So maybe your upbringing wasn't that humble. You had all the right gear.
Yeah, I had a printing press in my house in 2003 when everyone had a computer at home. Yeah, but no, it's one of those things where, you know, how far have we come now, right? Yeah. Because like you're talking about case studies, and then there's ChatGPT, right? It's a huge change for sure.
We're gonna talk to you about the paint industry when we come back from break. But before we go to break, Steve and I picked these chairs from Cambrian, and we were initially a little bit reticent because of that old like limerick, like blue and green should never be seen unless they're in the washing machine. Does that make sense, or is that like outdated? Can we have blue and green together now?
You can definitely have blue and green together.
I feel
you can
so
even
much better.
ChatGPT this. This is like they are of a similar value.
Yes.
So yeah.
So we did okay.
I mean, that's a very personal question, though. People might be like, up in arms about this.
Mail about blue and green. Yeah.
They can send the letters to Kelly then.
Yeah. Directly to Barrydowne.
Right. You can come in and take issue with this. Take it up with me.
Yeah. We'll talk more about innovation after the break. So we talked a little bit about the paint industry before the break. I think a lot of people like watching and listening don't necessarily think of the paint industry, especially commercial and residential paint industry, as one that's particularly innovative. You know, you go to the store, there's paint always there. What can you tell us about the industry that does show that it is like a dynamic and innovative industry?
Well, I find that so funny because I will tell you that if someone's ever going to be an inventor, there is no shortage. Anytime someone is gonna, hey, I've got a good invention, it is almost always a painting tool. Some new painting tool, some new way of making paint easier. So for some reason, painting inspires a lot of inventors. I don't know if it's the same as innovators, but it's interesting because it is such an old industry. The paint industry is really old, and it moves very slowly and almost only, and we're not talking about color here. Color is always changing. If we talk about actual products, like short of the development of water-based paint, You know, when before that, the ability to just tint colors. You know, you used to have to go in and you're like, I want red paint, and you would get red paint off the shelf.
Yeah.
Now we've got 3,500 colors. It's pretty much limitless. So I think the paint industry is a little bit of a dichotomy in that it's like, on one hand, you've got, like, it is very innovative and it is always transforming, but you don't see it on the surface, right? Like, customers don't always experience the innovation that's happening under the hood, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that is a good point to delineate. It's not the pigment industry. It's the actual, like the
industry.
The industry.
Yeah.
Industry. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the like inventions. I remember my dad had one for spray painting when we were kids.
It's a thing.
It was like half of a Javex bottle that would fit on the back of a can of like spray paint, so that like when you spray paint like your car, there's no overspray.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure there's tons of those, right? Like that's just something he like put in the backyard.
There's something about the painting process that like inspires people to innovate and to like invent a new tool to make it easier.
Do people ever bring stuff into the store to show you that this is a thing
all
that
the time?
Okay.
That's why I know firsthand that there is just this like surge of inventors locally, nationally, internationally, like whether it's like a new paintbrush. There was a gentleman named Sean actually that did invent something locally that became quite popular, and it was like a pin and cap for caulking guns that would keep it.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Which, you know,
Instead of a screw.
it was like a nail with like a rubber like nozzle on the end of it, and it would put into the end of a caulking tube, and it actually worked. And I know that that was invented locally, and he sold it, and not just to us, there were retailers everywhere that sold this. And I remember when he came in and he was like, I've got an idea, and me thinking, this is an enormous industry for this.
Tiny
But
thing.
it's true. It's people are very inventive when it comes to trying to make their paint jobs go smoother.
That's the end of the aisle stuff, right? Where you have it hanging there.
A lot of tools.
Yeah.
There isn't a ton of innovation in now. The paint manufacturers will totally disagree with me because they are always innovating and they're always reformulating to make paints better. But to the everyday consumer and like what we see and feel, hasn't changed much.
I always see these TikTok reels of like different things that you can do, and I try them, and then half the time I just end up abandoning them. Like I can't tell you how many paintbrushes I've like lost to like these tricks where it's like I'm gonna put it in a bag and then I can put it in a freezer, and then it's by the time I'm ready again, it's just like I'm just gonna go buy a new brush.
The internet and social media is like a good, and ChatGPT. I think I'm going to start feeding ChatGPT the right answers for things.
Right.
I'm going to start feeding it the correct information because you can Google anything. And I've often thought that we need to start a show where we'd call it like, where are they now? These projects where somebody's like, yeah, I painted my upholstery, or paint your this, or
Looks good on day one.
and it looks good on day one, and then I saw this. Look at this video, looks great, but you don't realize, okay, in like 10 months this is done, or in 10 days this is done. So I feel like the internet, sometimes we cringe when we see something pop in or pop up. We're like, please don't do this with your paint. We call it when good paint happens to bad projects, But
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a lot of that's rage bait too when people are painting on purpose, like poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gets me all the time.
it gets me every time.
I'll never know how to paint behind my toilet though. That's something like I don't want to take the tank off, so you gotta
Take the tank off.
Okay,
That's how you do it.
That's the easiest solution.
Get a new wax seal.
There we go.
Figure it out.
Yeah, sorry.
But we talked like in terms of innovation though. I think you've done some really innovative stuff with Paint Pass. Can you talk to us about Paint Pass and how you've implemented that to help retailers leverage tech to sell more paint?
It was such a funny story. Well, I think it's a funny story, but we were, you have to roll back a little bit because when this happened, it was like, it really started in like 2015 and just kind of looking at all of our behavior on smartphones. And anytime you want to do anything, your first impulse is to go to your phone. You want to know something, you want to go somewhere, you want to do anything, and your first thing is you're going to go to Google. And I remember just kind of thinking like, and we had just opened a third store, which we since closed. We had opened a third store, and I was like, my first time opening a new bricks and mortar store, I was like, my goodness, things are expensive. Like, to open a new store, you have shelving, you have permits, you have shakers, like it's hundreds of thousands of dollars just to open a new store. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, well, we need to make a store that's like in everybody's pocket. When you're at work, it's basically there. That kind of matches the path to purchase or the type of experience that you would have in our store. And so if you think back, you're probably thinking, wow, well, of course, every e-commerce platform is like that now. But at the time, there was no translation of that paint buying experience digitally. And so I had it in my head. I went out, I spent a significant amount of money trying to have it built. And then when I got it, I was like, it was beautiful to look at, but it just didn't it didn't work the way that it needed to. And having just spent all the money on the new store, I was like, okay, well, this is a store that could be with you anytime you wanted to go. I was like, this store is worth more money than my physical store because it can be in everybody's pocket. So I gave it a decent budget, except I basically hired a bunch of kids. Like I hired School of Architecture students, people that did not know how to code. Like we were all kind of figuring it out as we went. There was some experience there, but we called it the hackathon. We literally just hacked away at it. And then our team grew, and then we figured out, and then we had this really beautiful platform that actually worked. I remember the first day we were able to make like a product available for in-store pickup versus local delivery. Like the first day that happened, it was like, we were drinking champagne. It was yeah. And then we spent the next couple of years thinking like we'd have other retailers, they'd be like, who built your website? I'd be like, well, I built the website. And my colleague Brianna, who's like a wizard, she's one of the School of Architecture students that she runs that whole company now. And so we would be like, well, we did it. And then they're like, well, can you do it for us? And so that was how Paint Pass was born. And it was a lot of convincing at first. There was a lot of retailers where we were like, hey, this will be perfect. We wanted these like markets to do proof of concept in, and that's a slow industry. Like they are not super happy to like dive into new technology. And then, so we had like our main early adopters, but then in 2020, when in the United States people couldn't shop in store, it was all of a sudden like we had this board with all the companies we wanted to work with. By the end of like June, we worked with all of them. We had built all of their platforms, and it was pretty innovative because even at the time, the big companies like Lowe's and Home Depot, they did not have that capability. So it really put the independent channel ahead for those critical months when you guys were all at home painting.
Doing
I mean,
DIY
I guarantee you
projects.
painted
We definitely did.
during that early shutdown because that's what most people did. So it was very lucky timing in that regard.
That's great. I want to hear a little bit more about the expansion of that platform. We're going to take a break and we'll come back and talk about that.
Awesome.
Okay, we're back with Kelly Scott for Barrydowne Paint. You were just talking about Paint Pass and some of the expansion you've had recently.
Yeah, we were very fortunate in our timing in when we launched that platform. And now we're 5 years down the road from kind of 2020 when we like set up a lot of these retailers with this technology. And our company has gone from really focusing on e-commerce for paint and for coatings, and now trying to look into how can we automate a lot of activities. Like we focus a lot of our time on trying to translate the in-store experience online. That's at the core of everything that we do. So we use a lot of, our goal is to really unlock a lot of technology for retailers so that way they can have that happen without somebody pulling the levers themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Admittedly, I don't really know that much about the paint industry.
Oh, sorry.
I honestly set you up for that one. I don't know what I was going to say now. No, I was going to say, we often ask our guests, especially when they're in like a very specific industry, could you tell us something about the sector you're in that not very many people know? So when I see the paint industry, there's probably a lot going on that the common person wouldn't understand or wouldn't know. So is there anything interesting that you end up telling people?
I mean, from a business standpoint, if you're passionate about business, the paint industry is super unique in that you have, you can buy paint anywhere. Like there's paint at Canadian Tire, Home Hardware, there's all these places to buy paint. And yet the industry is made up of a few really large players. Like you have there's a lot of consolidation in the industry. So at the end of a lot of those pipelines, a lot of those storefronts, it's the same two, really big companies. And so you have your corporate channels, And then the paint industry still has this independent channel. So companies like Barrydowne Paint, where we are not a franchise. It is not, it's not a corporate store. It's owned locally, and you have this network of retailers, I think we call them retailers or entrepreneurs, that run these independently owned stores. In the United States, though, those independently owned stores are actually enormous. So they have like 70 locations and there are so many people in the United States. Like there are just like so many people there. So those businesses are pretty big. And yeah, I think it's interesting because it's a whole bunch of small players against some really large players.
Like PPG? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like when we went to the
arena?
Penguins game. There's an arena named after PPG Paints.
Yeah, PPG is one of the examples, and to the point where some of these companies have gotten so large that they actually run into challenges where they can no longer. PPG just underwent a little bit of a reorganization because they just got so big that they couldn't grow any bigger because of antitrust. So that's how big these companies are, where they actually start to block their acquisition and their growth because you're into the scale of monopolies, especially in the United States.
And think of how hard it would be to innovate with companies of that size, right? Like, I'm sure that that's in their strategic like vision for it, but like with an entity that large, like
it's so much harder for them. And that's where people will say like, oh, it's difficult to be up against these guys. And my philosophy is like, it is way easier for us. If we want to test something, we don't have any red tape. It's kind of just like, can we raise the funds to do it? And we have a few philosophies like where we're like, we always believe in launch early because that's when you can start to iterate. A lot of times when people are going to run a digital project or something, it's not ready, and then they launch it. You always have to iterate. So launch early so you can start that process. But a lot of larger companies, they can't be as flexible with that, right? They're very afraid of failure, whereas we're kind of like, well, this failed, and that, in a lot of cases, the failure was truly what made something, like the failure of our investment in that first site was what created the whole thing. If it hadn't have been that failure, we wouldn't have been so motivated to actually go out and get it done.
I just thought of an interesting question, but you go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you because we talked off camera about how like painting is often, you can kind of compare it to cilantro. People either love it or they hate it. Although I will say that my wife, I think at one point hated cilantro. I've converted her because I think I found a really good recipe with it. And now she's a little bit more open-minded. But you obviously encounter a lot of people in the store, from the inventors who want to show you what they've done, or people that are just taking on their own like at-home projects. What do you say to people who are like, I hate painting? Is there anything that you can do or say to get people to reconsider that painting isn't bad?
Well, I mean, realistically, there's two good answers to that.
Okay.
The first is marry someone who loves to paint. that is your easiest, should be your most inexpensive pathway. If you can't do that, then if it's too late, then you should hire a painter. Because we have a lot of really great painters. But if you're trying to find, we were talking about this in the office, where if you can't do those two choices, have you ever gone and helped a friend paint?
Yes.
And you've shown up and they have had the worst tools. Like they've had like the crappiest roller or like, really, really weak tools. Paint is expensive, your time is expensive. If you have the option of buying a roller that is, $6.99 compared to $2.99, splurge on the $6.99 roller because it makes a difference.
Yes, absolutely.
So that would be the one thing, is have all the tools. Because if you've ever tried to do it without all the tools, and I'm not selling here, I'm just mean like I helped somebody paint a couple weeks ago, and I thought to myself, I actually left and I went to the store after hours, and I'm like, I'm gonna sponsor this. I'm sponsoring all the tools because I just couldn't do it anymore. But
yeah, actually, that ties into what I wanted to ask you. So you still enjoy painting? Is that?
I love painting.
Really, eh?
I find, but I mean, you have to know your skills. So I'm not great at cutting, but I love to roll. I love to roll, and that's another thing. People don't like to cut. Your cutters aren't your rollers.
You need a cutter and a roller. I've always
my
said
dad and I always
always
tackle jobs together with painting, and he'll do the cutting, I'll do the rolling, and it's a good combo most of the time. Until he starts to take issue with the way I'm rolling. Not the right line, so
family projects, man, they're tough. But I was going to ask you, so you see color everywhere, I'm sure. Do you see like Pantones and paint everywhere you go? So when you see a color that, oh, I haven't seen that before, and like have a desire around color?
You know what's really funny is I'm so neutral on color, because even like some trends that have come along now where I'm like, I remember like doing whole houses in these colors, and then 10 years afterwards thinking we're gonna go to color hell for having sold dusty rose and sage green. Meanwhile, that blushy rose and sage green are so popular now. Yeah. So I really think that at this stage in my life, I don't get fussy on color. What gets me is when I see like bad paint jobs or like the wrong paint on the wrong surface, and I really just want to like find the person and just be like, hey,
there's a better way.
Like I get like really, I get like a little bit. I've been a few places where my husband's like, Kelly, don't say anything. Yeah.
So if you invite Kelly over, just know that she'll be looking at your paint job.
Sometimes, but I mean that's another good thing is I work for wine, so when people do, a dinner party doesn't go by where I'm not like picking colors or explaining to someone how to patch a hole or something. But
that's great. Yeah. Well, Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. That's Kelly Scott from Barrydowne Paint. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, you so much. It was fun.
Take care.